Welcome to the debate. For 100 years, if you wanted to know what a law firm was worth, well, you looked at its prime real estate. You looked at its mahogany tables.
Yeah, the classic leather-bound books, the expensive art on the walls.
Exactly. You stepped off the elevator, saw the expansive law library, the talented associates bustling through the halls, and you felt this immediate sense of prestige. But today, you look at its cloud architecture.
Which is, frankly, terrifying a lot of traditional partners.
Oh, absolutely terrifying them. The landscape of legal market valuation in 2026 has fundamentally shifted. We are seeing a radical departure from that physical architecture of trust. And the core argument circulating in the market right now is that the most valuable asset in a modern firm is completely invisible.
Right.
Today, the script has flipped. I'll be arguing that technology is no longer a line idol. It is the primary proprietary equity of the firm. And they designed those old physical offices to project permanence, right? To make clients feel secure. And you are right that the modern equivalent is invisible. But I'll be arguing that we need to be very careful about confusing the pipes with the water. The technology stack is simply the new mandatory plumbing required to utilize the firm's actual assets.
Let me lay out exactly where I stand on this so we can dive into the mechanics. I view the consolidated technology ecosystem itself as the firm's most valuable turnkey asset. It serves as this proprietary engine that guarantees profit margins and, crucially, creates scalability that human beings just cannot match.
Right, and I maintain that the firm's invisible data and its decades of past work product, along with human expertise, are the true proprietary assets. The technology stack, while undeniably critical, is simply the modern mining equipment required to pull that gold out of the ground.
Okay, so I want to start by exploring how we actually measure that value internally. Because the traditional legal business model is being completely upended by the decoupling of profit from time.
The death of the billable hour, essentially.
Exactly. Historically, if a firm wanted to increase revenue, what did it do? It hired more people. It relied entirely on manual processes, requiring the, late-night heroics of junior associates grinding through boxes of discovery to get massive filings out the door. Overhead was stubbornly tied to headcount.
Sure.
But a modern, consolidated ecosystem fundamentally breaks that linear relationship. When you have integrated practice management and AI-driven document automation doing the heavy lifting, a firm with a clean tech stack transforms into a turnkey asset. Buyers or partners evaluating a firm today are looking at the durability of the workflows engineered into that software. That makes the tech itself the primary driver of market valuation.
Well, it is certainly true that relying on associate heroics is a dead business model. I mean, no one is arguing for a return to the paper chase days.
Right.
But I fundamentally reject the idea that the software architecture is the actual crown jewel here. We are operating in an environment where data is the new gold mine. And when I say data, I am talking about incredibly specific, highly proprietary assets.
Like what specifically?
Like 20 years of accumulated matter histories, deeply nuanced billing patterns across different jurisdictions, precise outcome variables from complex litigation. The software architecture you're describing, these cloud environments, the SaaS practice management platforms, these are commercially available products.
But they're customized.
They are. But the software alone is generic. Any well-capitalized firm can purchase the exact same technological framework. What makes it valuable to a buyer is the specific intellectual capital that has been poured into it.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. You are treating the software like it is just a passive bucket holding the data. But it is much closer to a digital central nervous system.
Okay, how so?
Let's look at API integrations, for example. Application programming interfaces. This is how different pieces of software talk to each other. If a firm has incredible historical data, let's say brilliant negotiation precedents from a senior partner, but their systems aren't integrated, what happens?
Someone has to move it manually.
Right. A paralegal is manually copying and pasting that data from the billing software over to the document management software and then into the drafting platform. That friction destroys the value of the data, the latency, the human error, the sheer cost of time. The integrated technology stack completely removes that operational friction. Therefore, the ecosystem that connects the data and makes it instantaneously actionable is the real proprietary asset.
I come at it from a different way.
because we need to define what makes an asset truly proprietary. Your digital central nervous system analogy is great, but let's take it a step further.
Sure.
If a human being loses their nervous system, they are paralyzed, yes? But if you put a world-class nervous system into a body with zero muscle memory and zero learned skills, it still cannot play the piano.
Well,
Let me finish this thought. The integration, those APIs making everything talk seamlessly, is just optimization. Optimizing a workflow doesn't create the underlying value, it just prevents the existing value from leaking out through operational friction. A perfectly integrated tech stack at a firm with terrible lawyers and bad historical outcomes is just a highly efficient system for delivering bad legal advice. The raw material, the bespoke legal data, is what actually wins cases.
okay, I take your point on optimization. So we disagree on whether the data or the software is the true engine internally. But let's look at what happens when that engine actually starts processing complex work, particularly when we introduce artificial intelligence into the mix. Because we aren't just talking about optimization anymore. We are dealing with agentic AI.
Right, and this is where the market gets incredibly noisy. Look at how firms are utilizing predictive pricing right now. Modern firms are moving away from the billable hour and offering fixed fees for complex multi-year litigation that guarantees them a specific profit margin.
Which clients love.
Absolutely, and they use sophisticated algorithms to do this. But fundamentally, that algorithm is just a highly advanced calculator. The predictive power, the ability to know exactly what a massive corporate merger will cost to execute, relies entirely on the firm feeding that AI thousands of past billing patterns. The AI can only calculate risk based on the historical reality of the humans who did the work.
Wait, before we go further, I have to push back, or actually, let me just admit some confusion here on how you are defining this. When we talk about agentic AI, we aren't just talking about a glorified search bar or a calculator running a spreadsheet.
I'm not saying it's just a spreadsheet.
But how are you viewing the mechanics of this? Because my understanding is that agentic AI is actively making autonomous decisions. It isn't just looking up past costs. It is ingesting a massive 200-page incoming contract from opposing counsel, identifying deviations from the firm's standard negotiating positions, and proactively suggesting contextual red lines without a human pressing a button to initiate that query.
Yes, it executes multi-step workflows.
Exactly. How does that not transcend being mere mining equipment? It possesses active intelligence.
Because of how it achieves that autonomy. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the autonomy itself is the core value. Let me tell you why by getting into the mechanics of how that AI actually works. To get an AI to automatically redline a contract the way you are describing, a firm has to build a vector database.
Right, which maps the semantic relationships.
Exactly. They take 20 years of their best partner's work product, every email, every brief, every marked up contract, and they convert all that text into mathematical representations, into vectors. When the agentic AI reads the new 200-page contract, it isn't thinking in the human sense. It is mapping the spatial relationships between the words in the new contract and the vectors in the firm's historical database.
And it does so instantly, across 1,000 active matters simultaneously.
Yes, but it is mimicking the firm's true asset. The text we are analyzing explicitly states that the AI generates drafts that, quote, sound exactly like your best lawyers. If you take that exact same agentic AI with the exact same processing power and you layer it over a mediocre firm's database, it will autonomously generate mediocre, uninspired red lines.
Well, sure, the training data matters.
It's everything. The software has no intrinsic authoritative voice. The intelligence you are assigning to the tech stack is actually just a brilliant mathematical reflection of the human intellect captured in the proprietary data. Without the unique past work product, the AI is a fantastic mimic standing on an empty stage with absolutely nothing to say.
That's an interesting point. Though I would frame it differently. I acknowledge that the AI requires the training data to establish its voice. But you are brushing past the reality of scalability.
How so?
Let's say you have a brilliant senior partner. Her legal mind is the firm's greatest asset. In 2015, she could only work on maybe 3 major mergers at once. Her human capacity was the hard ceiling on the firm's revenue. Today, through that vector database and agentic AI, the technology extracts her brilliance, digitizes it, and scales it across the entire firm instantaneously.
Right.
A first-year associate in a different time zone
can now generate a first draft that embodies her 20 years of strategic wisdom in 4 seconds. You are taking the brilliance of one human and using software to make it omnipresent. The mechanism that shatters the physical limitations of human time and space is the technology. That is what buyers are paying for when they acquire a modern firm.
They're paying for the mechanism to access the partner's brain. If the partner's brain wasn't valuable, the mechanism wouldn't matter.
But if the mechanism didn't exist, the partner's brain would still be capped at 3 mergers a year.
Which makes the technology essential. But essential does not mean it is the primary equity.
Well, let's step outside the internal mechanics of the firm for a second, because at the end of the day, clients don't care about our internal vector database debates. They care about what they experience and the friction they feel. Let's talk about the silent client experience and the role of the tech stack in actively generating revenue.
You mean the delivery of the service?
Exactly. Clients today rarely ask a law firm about their server specifications, but they absolutely feel the friction of outdated technology. If a client needs an urgent contract verification and they have to wait 3 days for an associate to manually review it and email a Word document back and forth, that feels antiquated.
Oh, completely.
Conversely, when a client can log into a secure proprietary portal on their phone, upload a document, and receive an AI-verified, perfectly formatted response in 2 hours, their perception of the firm's brand authority skyrockets. And beyond just speed, let's look at security. We are operating under intense regulatory scrutiny now. Look at the EU AI Act or the baseline requirements for SOC 2 compliance.
Right, the data security frameworks.
Yes, and let's actually break down what that means for a client, because it is crucial. SOC 2 Type 2 isn't just having a strong password. It means an independent auditor has spent months verifying that your cloud infrastructure, your internal access controls, and your data encryption meet incredibly strict standards.
Sure.
The EU AI Act dictates exactly how AI models can be deployed to ensure they aren't hallucinating or biased. If a massive financial institution is looking to hire a law firm in 2026 for a highly sensitive merger, they literally cannot legally share their documents with a firm that doesn't meet these standards. Building a SOC 2 compliant cloud-native platform creates a digital fortress. That technology stack is what actually wins the competitive RFPs. It drives client acquisition directly.
That's a compelling argument. But have you considered that security and compliance are ultimately just negative filters?
What do you mean by negative filters?
I agree completely that good enough security is no longer an option. If your firm cannot withstand an audit under the EU AI Act, you simply will not be invited to the table for competitive RFPs. But passing a negative filter does not make something your primary proprietary asset. It makes it a baseline requirement for doing business.
I disagree.
Wait, hear me out. Clients demand secure portals, end-to-end encryption, and rapid turnaround times the exact same way they demanded that the lights turned on when they walked into that mahogany-furnished conference room 30 years ago. It is essential plumbing. You don't win a client simply because your plumbing doesn't leak. You lose them instantly if it does.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because it treats security and the client experience as binary checkboxes rather than a spectrum of service delivery. It is not just about keeping the lights on. Being tech-forward in the current market has become completely synonymous with being trustworthy.
Trustworthy, yes.
And that is a profound psychological shift in how corporate clients evaluate outside counsel. The technology ceases to be just a defensive fortress. Think about what a fully integrated ecosystem looks like to the client. It provides absolute transparency, real-time status updates on litigation, interactive dashboards for billing, seamless collaboration interfaces where the client's internal counsel can co-draft with the firm's agentic AI. That creates an invisible layer of customer service.
It makes the firm highly convenient to work with.
It makes the firm feel premium. In a saturated legal market where many top-tier firms have brilliant lawyers and deep historical data, the actual legal advice is often table stakes. The manner in which that expertise is delivered becomes the primary differentiator. If your tech stack makes the client's life remarkably easier and visibly more secure, the tech stack is actively generating revenue by elevating the brand authority. It isn't just the plumbing. It is the entire architecture of the modern client relationship.
I will grant that the delivery mechanism heavily influences brand perception. If the client experience is frictionless, the firm appears vastly more competent, and that does command a premium in the market. But if we are talking about valuation, we have to ask ourselves what the client is actually purchasing at the end of the day.
They're purchasing the total package.
They are not purchasing a beautiful dashboard. They are purchasing risk mitigation and legal outcomes. They are paying for the assurance that a specific regulatory hurdle will be cleared, or that they won't go to prison, or that their intellectual property will be protected. The secure portal delivers the contract quickly, sure, but the substance of that contract, the strategic brilliance that actually protects the client's interests, comes from the historical data and the human expertise guiding the AI.
Okay.
The client feels the premium delivery, but they are paying for the premium intellect. Confusing the delivery tool for the core trade is a dangerous miscalculation.
But if the tool is what allows the trade to be practiced at a scale, speed, and profit margin that was literally impossible 5 years ago, the line between the tool and the trade begins to blur permanently.
That's a fair point to consider.
We are ultimately looking at a fundamental redefinition of what constitutes a value in a professional services firm. The technology stack is the bridge to future growth. We've seen that relying on manual processes, where junior associates act as the glue between disconnected systems, anchors a firm to the past. By ensuring deep API integration, global accessibility, and active intelligence through agentic AI, the consolidated technology ecosystem allows a firm to punch far above its human weight class. It transcends being a mere utility. It is the proprietary engine that scales a firm's practice far beyond the physical limitations of its human workforce.
And from my perspective, while I completely agree that managing technology merely as a cost center is operational suicide, the underlying source of value remains entirely unchanged. The truly invisible asset is the unique synthesis of historical data, those specific matter histories and outcome variables, combined with human legal expertise. The technology stack, no matter how advanced or perfectly integrated, is the necessary vessel that ensures that data is accessible, secure, and rapidly deployable. A state-of-the-art AI mimicking a firm's best lawyer is a marvel of software engineering, but its value is entirely 100% dependent on the firm actually employing a brilliant lawyer and having the clean data to prove.
Well, I think where we achieve a strong point of convergence today is on the absolute necessity of modernization. Neither of us believes that technology can be treated as an afterthought anymore. A firm that continues to rely on the manual heroics of its staff to move data around is treating its technology as an anchor, holding it back.
Oh, absolutely. If your staff is manually copying data from a billing platform into a document drafting tool because the APIs aren't connected, you are bleeding equity every single hour of the day, regardless of how you define that equity. The baseline for survival has shifted fundamentally. Ignoring that shift isn't just old-fashioned, it is operational malpractice.
Which forces anyone managing or evaluating a firm right now to conduct a rigorous audit of their own invisible assets. If you're listening to this and leading a practice, you probably feel this tension daily. You have to ask the critical questions about your own infrastructure. Are your systems truly integrated, or is your staff acting as the human API? Can your team produce high-quality, securely compliant work from anywhere without friction? And perhaps most importantly, is your software just a passive filing cabinet storing your documents? Or is it actively analyzing your data to give your firm a competitive edge?
Yeah, that specific transition from passive storage to active, autonomous analysis really is the defining characteristic of the modern practice.
It really is. It changes how we think about capability and what clients are actually willing to pay for. You know, you can still have the mahogany conference table in the corner office. It is nice to look at, and it certainly projects a certain traditional comfort when a client walks in. But that table will not draft a fixed fee arrangement. It will not guarantee your profit margins, and it certainly will not ingest a 200-page contract and redline it in 4 seconds. We leave it to you to determine where the true driving value in your own firm lies, in the bespoke data you possess, or the digital central nervous system you build to unleash it. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.